Yes, indeed, powerful people. This is another episode of Breaking the Machine. I'm your host, Ahmad the Poet. Unfortunately, my partner Spank is not in the studio with us today. He had to take care of some family business, but he will be back for the next episode. But today we got a special episode. We got some special guests on the show today. We got the educational director, public speaker, author. We got the Mr. TK Coleman in the studio with us today with his good friend Kamau, who is the host of the Pivot and Proceed podcast. How you gentlemen doing today?
Hey, man, we good, man. Blessed to be alive.
Man, it's a blessing. Indeed. It's a blessing. And before we get into breaking some machines and pontificating, I wanted to start off the show. I saw you post something the other day about a serious accident that you was into, and I wanted to give you a chance to kind of speak on that and just talk about how you've been doing since that accident.
Absolutely, man. I mean, so this wasn't long ago, just 2 weeks ago. My wife and I were out for a walk at night, and as we were crossing an intersection, there was a car. I don't know what the driver was doing, but she was driving an SUV, and she made a left and accelerated. We had the right of way, and by the time I could process anything faster than the speed of thought, when I looked to my right, I just felt the car smacking into my body. And you never know until moments like that just how many thoughts you can have in a fraction of a second. And I thought it was going to stop. You know, we all have had moments where, you know, there's a close brush with a car, you know, changing lanes without using the turn signal, but you just don't think anything bad is going to happen. Well, someone was wrong faster than I could be right. And she knocked me out, man. And she didn't even know that she hit a driver. She responded to my wife screaming, you know, on the side of the road. And when she saw my wife screaming, she finally stopped. And I'm thankful that she responded to that because it was nighttime and I was already knocked down and defenseless. And there was a lot of traffic behind her. The left turn that she was making, it's a turn where you accelerate because you're getting on the highway. And so if she would have ran me over, I have no doubt that just the momentum of that traffic, I would have been done, man. I would have been done. So my wife called 911 and the EMT came and got me. And they were pretty worried. They were worried about me having a concussion because they were asking me a lot of pretty basic questions, yes or no questions, asking me my name, and I just wasn't responding. And my body was really heavily lacerated. And so anyway, we went to the emergency room, man, and let's just say, long story short, that I still have a lot of healing to do, but everybody that I've talked to about this says people don't come out on the other side of that kind of hit. It usually ends in death or a life-altering injury. And it's looking like it's going to take some time for some healing, but it's looking like I'm going to come out on the other side of this, man, being able to do what I was able to do before I got hit. It's just a matter of time of continuing to get stronger and stronger. So, man, it's hard to take life for granted when you have a moment like that. It could have been the end, could have been over. And I had a good friend say to me, he goes, hey, if it had ended right there, you would have been blessed with a good life. But now that it didn't end right there, it's all hell yes from here on out because you're on grace time. So if it's not a hell no, whatever you do. I mean, if it's not a hell yes, it's got to be a hell no for whatever you do from here on out. So
have you experienced any like PTSD from that? Because I remember when I got in my first car accident, it kind of messed me up. And I know your situation, obviously you weren't in the car, but yeah, it was hard for me to drive for like 2 years after that.
I'm super cautious when I walk. I'm very mistrusting because it doesn't matter if you're right. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if you have an argument that says, you know, you were in the right. If you get hit, your arguments don't matter. If you're dead, being correct doesn't matter to you, right? And so I'm very mistrusting now. When I get ready to cross the street, I'm looking twice. I sometimes feel tempted to walk sideways, but, you know, that'll get better. But I do when I close my eyes sometimes or when I go to sleep, I do have that nightmare about something hitting me, you know? So it is kind of weird. I'm a lot more empathetic now to people who have PTSD. I'm a lot more empathetic to people who experience mild forms of paranoia. I get it. I can understand it. Yeah.
It's a blessing that you was able to make it out on the other side. Now you're progressing towards good health, man.
Absolutely, man. I'm grateful.
But for this episode, it was just a lot of thoughts like, man, what could we talk about? But it's basically I want to touch on some questions that I had, and then I got some supporter questions that I had them sent in that I want to, get you guys' thoughts on.
Yeah.
But I heard you talk about something on the Minimalist podcast. I think it was episode 190, and you were talking about stuck in maintenance mode. You create all these different successful different things, and then once you got them moving successfully, you kind of in maintenance mode of trying to maintain them, and it kind of like overwhelmed you in a way, and it kind of got you in like a state of fatigue. And I can feel that way a lot of times, and I want to like figure out how you got out of that space of like you were successful, you created some successful things, and now you got multiple machines running, and now you're in maintenance mode instead of like being in another mode of like overseeing, like, or and what got you in that space? Because you could have somebody oversee the things that you create, but is it just your desire to be so hands-on, or like what kind of got you in that space of being, you know, overextended?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'll say is there are two aspects to the creative process. First, there's the part where you bring something new into existence. But the second part is you manage this new thing that you've brought into existence. It's sort of like making a baby, right? There's making the baby, and then there's raising the baby. Making the baby is fun. Raising the baby can also be fun, but it's challenging in ways that making the baby is not, right? And so what do you do once you have successfully made this baby and this is with you for life, and now you have to raise it, you have to nurture it, you have to educate it? That's just intrinsically more difficult. And so a lot of times when we have dreams, things that we want to create, we fantasize about how amazing life is going to be when we finally get there. But when you get there, that also means you have customers who can misunderstand, customers who can be very demanding, customers who have suggestions that they want you to listen to. And that requires a completely different set of skills than the skills that it took for you to simply bring it into existence. And I think the way that you deal with that is, number one, you have to be really honest with yourself about what kind of creator you want to be. Some people are really great visionaries, and they're the best people in the business at getting something started, but they're terrible managers. And you don't have to be both. I think a lot of times we get so attached to labels like I'm an artist, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business person, and we feel like we have to be all the things in order to claim legitimacy in any aspect of that. But you can be an entrepreneur who hates managing people. You can be an entrepreneur who loves managing people, but who hates starting up new things. It's really about being honest with that aspect of creativity that you love, that you're good at, that you want to lean into, and then being very unapologetic about that as you seek help in those other areas. So when you create something by yourself or with a small team, once that thing you created starts to grow, you got to bring other people into the fold who have skills that you don't have, and be humble enough to accept the help, to acknowledge that you need the help.
One of the things I wanted to add to build on your point, in the early days when we were working together, I remember thinking about you as you know, you did all the jobs, right? Like you were the person who set the vision, you were the person who, you know, was responsible for executing the vision, the person who was responsible for tracking the results, the person who was responsible for reporting to stakeholders. And you know, through all of that, I think like just being a close associate of yours, like I saw kind of what your strong points and what his weak points were. And I think as we just continued to work together, I think you were very clear about what you were good at and what you were not good at. And he knew that he was a really good visionary. One of the things he used to tell me was, man, I got to get back to reading. I got to get back to reading. I spent so much of the early days of my career, of my life, reading, consuming books, going crazy in the library. And to the point now that when it comes to my communication game and when it comes to spreading and articulating the ideas that I want to share, you know, I don't have as much new content to pull on. I don't have as many new ideas, many more topics that can have idea sets and come up with new things. And just kind of knowing where, look, I got to self-regulate and I got to continue to invest in the things that made me as sharp as I am and made me as good of a visionary that I am. Like I got to continue to invest in those things. And so, you know, for me being one of the young partners at the time was like, hey, like this is kind of where we need to focus on, but this is like where I need to focus on. And it was very distinct what those two directions were.
That's so good, man. And this is kind of a tangent, but this is one of the reasons why we see people who have so much hustle, so much charm, so much charisma and talent make it to the top and then fall. Because in order to get to the top, they had to do all of these things. They spent a lot of time working out. They spent a lot of time hustling, staying up late, a lot of time networking, a lot of time meditating, doing all of the things that it took to become really valuable. But the more valuable you become, the more people start to demand your time, people want to be a part of what you're doing, or you start successfully writing songs, creating businesses, putting out products. And now your life is more involved with other people, and it's easy to lose yourself in what you have created, that you start to become disconnected from what fueled your creative fire. And it takes a lot of work to stay connected to the things that make you come alive. So it's not just about asking yourself, hey, what makes me really great at keeping my fans or my customers happy, but what made me the type of person who was so on fire that people wanted to engage me in the first place. And the further you go along the path, the harder you got to work to carve out space for that.
Is it always going to be one person in the group who wants it a little bit more than the rest of them? Because I was having a conversation with a gentleman like a couple months back, and he was telling me that, like, man, that's like your cross to bear. Everybody has a cross to bear, and do you think that's what caused a lot of people to overextend? Just like it was your idea and exception. It was something that's driving you and it's burning in you. And maybe it's just like, hey, it comes with, like, it was your idea, you know? It's not their job to do it like that.
Oh, you mean like the humility that's required to hand off a project to somebody else?
Ooh,
Yeah.
The humility, yes. The humility.
Yeah, it's hard to make it grow if you get lost in your ego, man. It's hard to make it grow if you get lost in your ego, because to hand off something to another person requires you to admit to yourself that they have something that you don't have that can take it to the next level. And you also have to respect their freedom to take it in a direction that might not be a perfect expression of what you would have done with it if you were in charge. And that's okay, because that's what it means to evolve. But yeah, that can be an incredibly difficult thing to do. You have to keep your ego in check. I think Kamau would have a lot to say on this.
Well, you know, I'm thinking about it from even kind of closer to the original question, which is like, you know, is there always going to be that one person? And in a group, I don't know. I don't know in my experience if there's always that one like go-getter who's like, I am, you know, the Michael Jordan of this team. Like, I think there's a few different people who want that, who want to be the top head shot. And I think a lot of times what it ends up resulting in is people just having to go their own directions, you know? But I think for the good teams, it's the ones who recognize that, like, I just got to be the best me. I got to be the best puzzle piece. I got to plug in the best way I can. And I think that's as far as the team is going to go. But that is so hard. That's harder than it sounds, right? Like it's harder to admit that I'm not Michael Jordan. It's harder to admit that, like, all right, these are my limitations. These are what other people on the team can do better than me, and let me defer to them. And maybe that's not even the path for everybody. Maybe you do need enough ego to be like, no, I am the Michael Jordan. I am the leader. I have the best vision, the strongest direction, and I'm going to take us this way. But if you're not pulled, at least for me, if you're not pulled in that direction, you should enforce it.
So in that reference, would you suggest switching teams? Because that's interesting. I like that.
If you got two Michael Jordans?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, so you got this team and you are piece, and you're like, okay, we're not going to make it to the chip if I'm just the part of this piece. One of us has got to put up 40. Because, you know, these guys, they putting up, they shooting the threes, they Steve Kerr, but somebody, we playing against Patrick Ewing right now. He's dunking it down the middle. We need somebody to put up 40. And it's just like, okay, do I assume that role? Because I feel like the dudes who assume the role of MJ, I don't know if they want it. They just want that chip. I don't know if they really want to put up 40. It's like, man, if he put up 20, I wouldn't put up 40. But it's like, somebody got to put up 40 because they ain't not about to put up 20 and 20. I got to do it. So would you suggest, do you think the right choice, I mean, there's no right or wrong, but
well, I mean, I like your analogy. I feel like your situation, not even if you don't have a situation, but I feel like you have a good read on the situation. And that's the most important part. Like, if you have a good read on it and you feel like, if not me, then who? You know, if that's the read, then it is you. And it's responsible. You do need to step up. You need to take them as far as that you feel like they can take you. But I think it can also be the case that you know that you got a good thing here. You got good players. You guys have potential, and I think your own ego is like pulling or pushing you to be the front runner, to be the star of the show, because you want to make sure that you're seen, that you're prevalent, that you're noticed and recognized. And so in those situations, I feel like you really got to have a conversation with yourself. Like, are you trying to split and go a different direction and gamble the potential of this new direction, or do you really see some greatness in what's currently available, and how far are you willing to either lead that or plug into that?
Right on. And one other area where I think that NBA analogies break down is that in the NBA, you get drafted onto a team. So if you ever find yourself playing alongside of Michael Jordan, chances are you didn't choose that, right? You were drafted by somebody, or somebody made a trade to get you on the team. So you don't really have, unless you're one of a handful of players in the NBA, people like LeBron who have a lot of leverage, most guys don't decide what teams they're part of. In the kind of work that we do, whether it's business, entrepreneurship, art, and things like that, you have some choice as to who you want to work with, who you want to make a movie with, who you want to go to the studio with. You have some choice. And I think it's real important to be transparent about what you're in it for and to know what your why is, because when things get heated, when things get tough, when things get challenging, we can know how to deal with each other because we know what's driving each other. And I think something that's very important for leaders is to never, ever, ever treat the people who work for you or who work with you as if your project is the end all be all of their existence. But tell them from day one, say, hey, look, I know you have a life outside of the work you're going to be doing for and with me. I know that you have your own dreams, and that this work that you're doing with me matters because it connects in some way to where you're trying to go and what your broader vision is. I want you to feel comfortable talking to us about that, because that lets me know how to motivate you. And that also helps protect me from asking you to do things that are going to compromise the vision that you have for your life. I don't want to do that because that's bad for me. It's going to make you resent me. It's going to make you hate the work. To create a win-win situation, leaders have to know what their employees' why is, what their teammates' why is, and never assume that your dream is their dream. Know that they have a broader vision and try to always explain your work in ways that connect to what they want.
And I think my issue is of past experiences affecting future projects, because I'm working on an audio book right now, and I want to mix and master the audio myself. I want to produce the soundtrack myself. I want to write it myself, do the voiceover myself, just because I don't want to wait for different things to come along. So that's very introspective, because I'm like, it's just different things in the future. It's just like I feel like I go faster if I just do all parts of it, and it's a business side to that as well, being able to do all parts of it. But it's beautiful, man. I find beauty in the process. Just learning this whole thing, man. It truly is beautiful. But I wanted to ask y'all about college. Did you go to college as well?
I didn't. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, that's wrong. I did go to college, and then after my freshman year, I dropped out.
Okay, well, that applies too. I was just wanted to ask, like, what's y'all kind of like take on college, the vibe that y'all got from college? Like, how was the college experience for y'all? I recently graduated, so it was interesting,
sure.
nice, But I wanted to ask, like, what was kind of y'all like takeaway from college? Like, what did it do for y'all?
Let me just say one quick thing, and I want Kamau to work this. So I just want to put on the record that I never use the term dropout. I hate the term. I prefer opt-out. Because the term dropout seems to imply that, you didn't have what it took to get to that next level, or you fell off in some kind of way. And I prefer opt-out because it means that you recognize that you had other options and you chose an alternative. You could have done that if you made that a priority, and you're good enough to do that if that's what you committed to doing. But ultimately, you chose to exercise a different option. And I think it's so important that we put an end to this religious infatuation with divinizing college and demonizing alternatives and treating people as if they are failures just because they've decided that one particular approach to preparing for your career doesn't work for them. So there's no one right way to educate a human being. And college is wonderful, works for a lot of people, but there are also many brilliant, beautiful, wonderful people who didn't need it, and they became successful and they live happy lives, and that's okay. We don't have to proselytize college as if God is going to punish us or punish people who opt out. It's not a religion.
When do you think we'll get to a space, because that's an interesting state. Like, because I didn't know you would give that take, so that's very interesting. Because I'm on that side of the spectrum. I'm on that side of the spectrum. Like college is like, man, I love, like I said, there's no right or wrong, but for those who love college, but for me it was kind of that programming, like your grandparents want you to go, your mom wants you to go, and I got 3 older siblings who opted out. And it's just like, dang, everybody's going to opt out. And it's like, okay, I'll do it, just to break that stigma that nobody can do it, but.
And by the way, that's different from not having a choice, right? That's different from saying, I want to go, but I don't have access to the resources. I want to go, but I didn't have mentors in my life who painted a positive picture of that for me. That's different. So I'm not hating on people who want to go to college, but maybe they're struggling to get the opportunity that they need. When I say opt out, I'm specifically referring to people who desire another option more than college. I don't think there's anything useful about harassing those people or demonizing them.
Yeah, I think for me, the decision came down to the opportunity cost of college. And I felt like what I was putting myself through was hell, like for real. Like,
absolutely.
I especially like, I went to Atlanta public school while I had a damn good time, and it made so much of who I am and taught me so many life lessons. Books were not a priority. Right. And going from Atlanta public schools into LSU, PWI, new environment, yada, yada, yada. But it was a big school, and a lot of the responsibility was on you to teach yourself. And so some of the things that I plugged into, like, were people using study drugs, right? Like people pulling all-nighters, people.
Yes.
I mean, everybody pulls all-nighters, but some of the things that I think you put yourself through college, that you put yourself through to do what you're told to do seems like a hell of a lot, right? And it's like, if I'm taxing myself, not only am I paying you guys, I'm digging myself in debt. I'm broke as shit. Like, this is a lose-lose situation for me for the next 4 years. And you can't promise me a job. Like, you can't promise me that I'll walk out here making at least 60. Like, come on. Like, there's people who are super degreed up who are like 45, who are like not 45 years old, but who are making like 45K. And it's like, come on, man. Like, come on. And so I think for me, I felt like I was under a lot of stress, and there was a time where like I just had decided for myself. I think I was around 19 years old, and I was like, you know what? One of the things that I've always wanted, I've said for myself, is that I wanted to be rich. And I felt like rich people read. That was just something that wasn't really, I guess, like encouraged in the social circles or even the mentorship that I had at the time. Like reading, it wasn't like, hey, you need to be reading more. But then when I kind of took it upon myself and I was reading more, so many of these books, I would find the same threads and the same, stories and examples that like this wasn't needed. Like for you to eat out here, you did not need to have a degree. Like, and you could look in history, some of the most intelligent, most successful, pioneers of industries, like these people weren't degreed up, And so I think it took me some time to get to a place where like I had more faith in myself than the system. And that was the calling. It was like, do you have more faith in yourself than a system? And at 19, I felt like, hell yeah, I do. I fell on my ass, like I tumbled, I moved around. But ultimately, I think the biggest takeaway that ended up putting me on the trajectory to where I am right now, where I'm exceeding way more than a lot of my peer group, that I'm eating, that I have career ambitions, that I'm kind of designing the life that I want. The thing that put me, that really got me here was I figured out like I still needed structure. I still needed to grow and continue to matriculate and develop. And I think college was one place that I could have done that. It was one avenue that was still required. But because I opted out, like I had to figure out, how do I supplement this for myself? How do I put myself through something that can get me where I need to go? Because you know that you need to go somewhere, but you don't know how to get there. And so I still knew that I needed help, and I had enough awareness to find a program where I ended up meeting TK that was all about getting young people ready for the next step, whether you wanted to be an entrepreneur, whether you wanted to be in business, whether you wanted to be a coder, marketer, salesperson, whatever, like just getting that first step. And so that's kind of the hardest part, is getting that first step in life. And college to me is, I think, a time-tested first step for a lot of people, but it wasn't the only one.
And you talk about the pursuit of riches. I want to ask both of you, what does riches mean to y'all today? Or what does it mean? Has it changed, the definition, than when it did when you...
Yeah, I think it has changed since I was 19. It definitely changed. I think me and him even share this a little bit when we talk about LA and some of the beachside properties, we dream about. But no, I think my definition of riches is a lot more shaped by the world and like the possibilities that are out here. Like, our world is so much bigger than the area we grew up in, or the city we're from, or even the country that we're from. Like, as soon as I kind of started stepping out and seeing what's possible and people's quality of life abroad, like that's when my definition of riches changed. But before then, it was always kind of like a money number or a money figure, monetary figure.
Yeah, for me, being rich is about having ownership of your time and being able to say yes to something because it's an expression of your aliveness, rather than feeling like you have to say yes to things that make you feel dead inside out of a sense of desperation over having to pay a bill, right? So many people feel pushed around, pulled around by forces beyond their control. So many people say no when they rather say yes. They say yes when they rather say no. And the reasons are economic. And I think being rich isn't about having a certain dollar amount. It's not about having a certain number of possessions, because each of us has a different set of things, variables that need to come together for us to be happy, right? One person can be happy living in Alaska and another person hates the cold and they need to be somewhere where it's warm all the time. So we all have different needs and things along those lines, but it's really about self-ownership. And that can happen on a relatively low income. And for some people, depending on their standards and tastes, it may require a really high income. But I think more important than focusing on the dollar amount is getting really clear with yourself on what your why is. One of the things I used to do, my first job after college, was as a financial advisor. And we'd sit down with clients and they wanted to talk about money right away. Like, I need this much. And we'd have to say, okay, wait a minute, hold up. Let's actually talk about your dreams. And then they react like, well, why are we talking about my dreams? I'm here to invest money. And we'd have to say, okay, well, how much you need to invest and what kind of return you need to have on that investment over what period of time depends on those dreams. When do you plan on retiring? Age 65 or 55? Because that's an entirely different investment plan. Who's retiring? You and your wife, or you or your wife? Entirely different investment plan. What age do you think you're going to die at? That's going to be a big game changer for your investment plan, right? Mm-hmm. How many children do you have? Do you want them to go to college? Do you plan on paying for that? Do you dream of paying for that? Well, it depends, right? And so there's so many questions we have to answer that will determine what that number is for each of us. For one person, it could be 50K. For another person, it's nothing less than six figures. But it's really about understanding for you what makes you come alive. What is your concept of the good life, and getting clear with yourself on that. And being rich can take a variety of different forms for different people. But hey, I want to pull it back and say one more thing about education. I think there's something weird going on in the way that we think about school that causes us to accept change and progress in almost every area of life except for education. People often ask me when I say I believe there's more than one way to educate a person, they ask me, well, did you go to college? And this is like their trump card, right? This is supposed to be the stumper question, because if I say, yes, I did, and I enjoyed it, yes. Well, I got you now, right? But then I follow that up with, yes, and I also used the fax machine at that time. I also used the taxi at that time. I also used a phone that actually did like this at that time. And I wouldn't think of using any of those things today, not because those things are bad, not because those things don't work for people that still insist on using them, but because I like the options that we have now that work better for the life I want to live. Once upon a time, my best option was to pay $50 for a taxi that would take an hour to get to me. And then that would harass me about paying them in cash. I would never do that now, right? I'll use the ride sharing app, get a ride in 5 minutes, already have the payment taken care of because it's much more convenient. As technology increases, as human connection increases, the way that we educate can become more flexible. We have so many things that exist today that simply didn't exist 10, 15 years ago, and we're able to build community and connect with human beings in ways that simply weren't possible. And if we're too quick to deify, well, it worked for me and I turned out all right, we close today's young people off to the options of things that might work for them that we didn't know about or have access to in our generation. So the question is not, did it work for you? The question is, who are the people today that are making decisions about their future? What are the options that exist today that we didn't have in our own time? And how can we help them put together a plan that's going to work best for them? And just like with financial advising, because we want to connect it. You don't tell people how to make an investment without asking them about their why. And part of the problem with how we approach education is we just use this cookie cutter model to tell everyone, if you're a senior in high school, your next step is to go to college. And we don't take the time to talk to any of these young people about their dreams, about their interests, about their fears, about the things they hate, about the things they definitely know they don't want to be doing in 10 years. We don't want to talk to them about that. We just say, here's the cookie cutter approach. You're going to college. And that's as irresponsible and reckless as telling a guy that he ought to go buy Tesla stock without asking him any money about his debts, about his dreams, about his tolerance for risk, or things along those lines.
So I know both of y'all in education, just to piggyback off education or to go off education. I was teaching all of last year at my old high school as a guidance counselor, and really working with a lot of the children in the inner city schools. And something that I constantly see is like a reoccurring habit that they, I don't want to say they're scared to dream or scared to go after the things that they want, but they feel like it's a stigma on it. Like, they scared to, we in a group session, they scared to say what they want. What do you...
Students?
Yeah, students. Like, what do you think is crucial for them to have in order to break that feeling of them saying like, no, I can't live in that house, I can't go here, I can't pursue that career, that job, like, because they feel embarrassed to say it, they feel less than if they say it, they feel childish if they say, I want the house like that. And it's just like, man, who's programming you to, like, I understand it, but it's like, how do we break it? We know the problem, but what is something that we could, like, in y'all words, what is like some affirmation, to something that can like get them out of that mindset? Because I've wrestled with that for so long.
TK said something to me earlier at a restaurant, and probably wasn't even more than like an hour ago. You said to me that I am very comfortable. I have a very high level of tolerance for being the loser in somebody else's story in order to be the hero in my own. And I think that's such a powerful illustration of believing, of choosing your own potential and your own belief over group acceptance. And at that age, it is very tough to do that. It is very tough to accept I'm going to sound like a loser to y'all because this is what I want to do. Choosing your potential or choosing to believe in yourself or choosing, to grow in positivity and affirmations and progress, like a lot of times, it doesn't sound sexy. It doesn't sound cool. It doesn't sound like lit. It sounds like kind of nerdy, and it's tough. I think as you mature, it gets a little bit easier to be a loser to somebody else, because I don't give a damn. Like, you're not putting no money in my pocket. Like, but when things like that, when bills and money aren't really concepts,
when social currency is worth more than actual currency,
exactly. Yeah. It's harder to make that decision to, screw the main currency. Like, I'm choosing to believe in me.
Man, that's so on point, because when you really think about it, people aren't afraid of failure as much as they're afraid of failing alone. So think for a moment about all the people, and there are quite a few, who've gone to college, they've gotten a degree, and then they go work a job that they hate. Maybe they didn't think they would be a barista at Starbucks, but they are. And let's be clear, there's nothing wrong with being a barista at Starbucks. But for that person, they don't want to be there because they were sold on a narrative that said, if I get a degree in X and I do what I'm told when I get out of college, right, somebody's going to hand me a fantastic job at a pretty high salary. And so they're in that situation where they feel like, man, I'm really not crushing it the way that I thought I was. We know what's going to happen. People are going to say to them, hey, look, you did the right thing. Just stay patient, keep working hard. It doesn't happen overnight. Because when you do what everyone else does and you do what other people want you to do, those people will support you when you fail. But what happens if everyone says, you ought to go to college? And you're like, nah, I want to go do something else. Oh, you better succeed, right? You better become the next Steve Jobs. Because if you fail and end up working a job you don't like and hating it, you go back to all of those people who told you what you should have did. They're not going to say, oh, man, just keep trying. Steve Jobs didn't get it right the first time. No way. They're going to tell you, you should have went to college. And so one of the reasons we're afraid to deviate from the crowd is because we know the crowd will persecute us if we're not successful. To deviate from the crowd is to take a greater burden to make whatever it is you're going to do work. So you feel that pressure. It's got to work. It's got to work. And one of the ways that you can kind of overcome that is, number one, increase your levels of self-sufficiency by learning the types of things that help make you more independent. Because the less you need to come back to those people, the more you have this ability through the skills that you've developed to keep going forward and to keep improvising and keep reiterating the creative process, the less you have to worry about those people who are thinking to themselves, I told you so, right? The second thing I would say is one of the best pieces of advice I ever received was from Peter Daniels, who said, over the course of your lifetime, read 1,000 biographies, because in doing so, it will build your vocabulary for overcoming incredible odds. James Baldwin said, you think you are alone in your suffering, but then you begin to read and you start to realize that your challenges are just a link in a chain that connects you to all of the interesting creative people that have ever lived. And you don't have to read 1,000 biographies, but I would encourage young people to find folks that are interesting to you. Don't start with my heroes or my concept of successful people. Start with musicians, actors, artists, designers, entrepreneurs that are cool to you. Get on YouTube, pull up some interviews where those people tell their story, and let those words get into your soul. Because when you begin to fail and when you begin to struggle, you'll be able to contextualize your life by saying, oh, you know what? This is actually par for the course. This is actually normal. It's sort of like the person who, they play baseball and they say, man, I'm doing really bad. I've been at bat 6 times and I've only got 3 hits. Well, at that average, you might be the greatest hitter in history if you can keep that up, right? Yeah. But if you don't have any concept of how to interpret your performance by knowing what the greats have done, you'll be doing amazing work and thinking of yourself as a failure because you're listening to people that don't understand the rules of the game that you're trying to play. If I were to say to you, Kamau and I are playing a game. Kamau has 9 points. I have 6 points. Who's winning? What would you say?
Kamau.
I would say it depends on what game it is. If it's football, Kamau's winning. If it's golf, I'm winning. How we interpret that score depends on knowing what game is it we're playing. And so if you want to learn how to deal with this fear of failure, you got to learn how to interpret the score of the games you want to play by studying people who play that same game. If you want to be an actor, stop listening to people that have never left their hometown, that don't even watch TV, that don't even know anybody that's been in a commercial and have never tasted or touched that business, and start talking with people that are actually immersing themselves in the world of theater and the performance arts. And that goes for everything. Like, what you feed yourself is everything.
Jesus Christ.
I wanted to add one challenge to the listener, not to actually get on YouTube. I don't want you to get distracted with the algorithm. I think the theme that's come up a couple times, but is to pick up some books for real. And I think that is a lost form of learning. If you want to deviate from the path, like, I promise you, there's hundreds of books on a subject. I think we're so involved and immersed in our own world that we think, we're really trailblazing a new path. And a lot of times, like in the early days, you were definitely not trailblazing a new path. You're just trying to even figure out what the map looks like, what the freeway is looking like. You don't know, you don't have enough to trailblaze your own path at that time. So it's like studying what has come before you, like TK has said, but choose books. Choose books. It's a challenge, and it's not what's going to be on your phone. It's not going to be what's convenient. But if you can discipline yourself to engage in these ideas, it will feed you.
I'm going to give one piece of advice that I swear by when it comes to choosing books, and that is the interesting stuff is the important stuff. If you try to read things just because you think they will make you look smart or become smart, I think you're setting yourself up for failure. The things that you will remember will be the things that resonate with you. The things that will create a spark in you are the things that you think are fascinating. And sometimes school conditions us to think of our interest as irrelevant, and so we think, well, if I'm reading about basketball, that's not smart. It only counts if I'm reading about engineering or science or chemistry or business. No, the things that are interesting to you are the things that will take you to everything else. If what you're interested in isn't important, I do believe it is, but if it isn't important, it's that knowledge that's going to take you to the things that are important. So start with the books that you're interested. TK, what's the best book to read? The one that you'll actually open up and finish. And that's the interesting book. And here's the fascinating thing about the brain, because a lot of people worry. They say, if I encourage my kids, or if I give myself the permission to just go all the way with what I'm interested in, then I'll just focus on that one thing and nothing else. Talk to any parent, and they will tell you that life is not that easy. If life was that easy, they could get their child one video game and one toy, and they would be satisfied forever. But any parent knows the human brain is designed to get bored very quickly once you master something and learn the ins and outs of it. And the brain has something going on that says, I refuse to let you have any more pleasure unless you give me a new challenge, which is why when you have a video game, all you want to do is just play that video game for like months, right? And then there comes a point where you're like, I've seen everything, I've done everything, I'm bored. And your brain's like, yeah, you can't have any fun more. You can't have any more fun, bro. You need a new game with new challenges, with something new to figure out. It's the same way when we encourage people to study their interest. Once they exhaust that and learn all the things about that, they're going to need new questions. Their brain is going to crave new challenges. And someone starts out reading graphic novels or anime, and then they say, you know what? I think I want to learn Japanese. That's how it works. Smart people are people that start with their interests and they just go far. Albert Einstein wasn't just good at physics. He actually was interested in physics. Michael Jordan wasn't just good at basketball. He was actually interested in basketball. If Jordan tries to be Einstein or Einstein tries to be Jordan, they end up being stupid because they're trying too hard to look smart.
Woo. You got some amazing quotables, man. You got this amazing quote. You said the goal in life is not to be happy, but emotionally versatile. Could you kind of go into that a little bit? Because that was a powerful one for me. I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah. So for me, emotional versatility is about learning to have a healthy relationship with the entire emotional spectrum. And it's about uncoupling from the habit of thinking about emotions in terms of good and bad, right and wrong. Some people, when they are sad, they look at that as like, oh, I must be evil. I must be doing something wrong. It's a sin to feel sad. And so we end up having this relationship to our feelings where we only love ourselves or accept ourselves when we're feeling the pleasant emotions. And whenever we're feeling any emotions that challenge us, that make us feel a little bit of suffering, we try to suppress it, we try to deny it and resist it, or we try to get ourselves out of that feeling state as quickly as possible. And the problem is, every emotion that we feel is a teacher, and it has wisdom to convey. And when we're busy suppressing a feeling or resenting or resisting a feeling, it's hard to tap into the wisdom that feeling is there to provide. If you feel jealous about something, don't rush into self-condemnation by saying, I shouldn't feel that way. Don't rush into suppression by saying, no, I'm going to make it go away. I'm going to think happy thoughts. I'm actually happy for that person. I'm actually happy for that person. You're just lying to yourself and reinforcing the jealousy and now adding guilt and shame on top of it, right? Sit with that feeling in a state of non-judgmental compassion and say, why am I jealous? This information about myself is important, right? If I'm jealous, that's just what it is. My feeling isn't right or wrong. What I do with that feeling is either healthy or unhealthy. But the feeling is just an experience. It's not who I am. It's an experience that passes through me, and I'm not going to let it go until it gives me a ride to wisdom. I think about emotional versatility in terms of choreography. Think about music. Let's say you're at a wedding and you got songs like what type of songs they play at a wedding? Black Eyed Peas, right? Tonight's Gonna Be a Good Night, or YMCA. They play all these old school songs that everybody has an easy time dancing to, right? Some genres of music are like that. They're really easy to dance to. Even the person who can't dance can get on the dance floor when YMCA is going, and they can just move their body in any way, and it just works. But then some genres of music are really difficult to dance to. You know, imagine if the DJ stops that, and then they put on swing, or they put on polka. Now the only person who can get on that dance floor and move is the person that has trained themselves to know how to move and groove to that kind of music. I think happiness is like a genre of music that's easy for all of us to dance to, which is why when we're feeling good, we never call each other and say, man, I'm so happy. I don't know what to do with it. What should I do? I feel so good. What should I do? We don't worry about what we're doing with our body. We don't worry about what to do next. Happiness is easy to dance to. But when we feel angry or sad, we call each other for help on that stuff because we don't really know how to dance to anger. We don't know how to dance to sadness. And emotional versatility is about learning how to dance with all of those feelings, learning how to channel the energy of anger, learning how to conduct the energy of jealousy along creative lines, and realizing that every emotional experience can serve us if we treat it like the brother or sister that it actually is. It's about being healthy, not about feeling pleasant all the time.
I love that. I love it. I wanted to ask both of y'all, what do you think is important in finding the process that works for you? Is it you trying multiple different things and just trying what works for you, or is it like looking up or looking at somebody who kind of reminds you of yourself and like, oh, if that works for them, then maybe it'll work for me? Because I heard you talk on the Minimalist podcast about that. Just like, you know, this eating habit might work for this person, but it doesn't work for this person. But both habits are healthy, but he's not eating like this person over here. You know, he's not doing the keto diet. He's doing something else, you know, and it works for him and it's still healthy, but it's not the same. Like, how do you develop that variety and what works for you?
I would say don't be religious about things that are not religion, you know? And I think one of the biggest problems in life is that we take non-religious matters and approach them religiously. Things like what time should I go to bed or get out of bed, what diet I should have. It's all about what works for you, right? And the way you find out what works for you is you create low-risk experiments and you try it out. How do you know if a shoe fits? By intellectualizing about it? By philosophizing about it, by conducting a survey where you find what 10 different people say, by listening to a podcast on how to find a shoe that fits. No, by trusting what is already there in your body, right? Trusting what you already have. You don't need any new information. Take the shoe off the shelf quickly now and try to put it on. It's either going to fit or it's not going to fit, and you're going to know pretty quickly without anyone having to help you out with that. I think it's very easy to overcomplicate what we should do next because we treat things as if it's the right way or as if it's the wrong way. We treat things as if we're getting ready to marry them rather than flirt with them. And so when we try a diet, we make these big announcements like, I am now committing for the rest of my life to the keto approach. You've just taken away your right to be wrong. You've just taken away your ability to decide in 2 months that this doesn't work for you because you just wrote on Facebook or Twitter, I am doing keto for the rest of my life. Don't treat it like that. Don't marry it. Just if you're interested in something, a new diet, a new way of working out, say nothing more than, hey, this seems interesting to me. I don't know why. It just seems fascinating. I'm going to try this out and see how it feels for the next week or two, and then I'll go from there. When you're low committed and experimental with the things that you want to try out, you give yourself the freedom to say, that doesn't work for me. I'm going to try something else now. And you give yourself the freedom to say, I'm going to continue going with this because it seems like it's working for me now. That would be my advice on it.
I think something that's worked for me personally is reflection. It's a weird word, weird concept. I think when I kind of first heard of reflection and it's a key to success and yada 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 yada, I think you think about like meditation or just like laying in your bed looking at the ceiling thinking about your life. I think for me the way that it's shown up in the impact that it's had has been tremendous, because I think to TK's point about all these little experiments, I think that's what your life is. Your life is just one big experiment. And I think to the degree that you stop thinking about success, or you stop thinking about your goals or where you're trying to get to or what works for you as a straight line, and you think about it as a bunch of little pivots, like just, turning here, turning there, then I think you understand that like you need to continue to move and shake and groove and turn, and you can't commit to one thing anyway. Like it's the whole thing is just a series of pivots and turns. And so for me, reflection has been a key to that, because I can look at myself and be like, oh, yep, that didn't work. Oh, yep, all right, let's try this week. Oh, yep, all right, this is something I really need to focus on this month. Oh, yep, like today was just shit because of XYZ. And I think when you take the time and you're intentional about it, you're able to kind of sit in that awareness and just look at your life objectively. My advice is to write down on paper, to come up with a series of questions that you can answer for yourself and look at. You're going to look at what you wrote and try to pick patterns out of that. Try to see like, all right, that this is something that has come up for the last 2 or 3 times, and I know I need to move in a different direction. And I think once you start doing those little incremental tweets and then you build some momentum, you start getting that confidence, you start getting that swag. You're like, okay, I'm in my bag now. Like I know, like, this is where I really excel. This is where I do need a little bit more support. This is, something that I can do in my sleep. Once you start kind of having an idea of those strengths and what works for you, then you can either optimize for it or you can, work on it. And I think people take different directions, right? Some people are really committed to being, I'm just going to be the best at this thing. And some people are committed to like, I want to be good at a lot of different things. Like I want to be well-rounded, but you don't even know any of that until you sit down and you really look at yourself and you try to think about yourself as like a multi-dimensional being. You're not just one thing. You bring a lot to the table and you want to do a lot. So you got to be intentional about each of those different components of your life, and you got to reflect on that stuff.
It's interesting when I think about that, because you hear people say a lot, follow your passion. And when I work with high school students and college students, so many people are nervous, anxious, and afraid because they don't know what their passion is. They've been told all their lives, follow your passion, find your passion and go do that. And so now they're all in their heads trying to solve this riddle of what is my passion so that I can commit to it and do it. And what Kamau is talking about is about saying, hey, like maybe I'm not ready for that yet. Maybe passion is something that I discover as the result of a process in which I give myself permission to playfully explore. And maybe after playfully exploring for a while, I begin to learn, oh, I don't like that so much. I do like that, but I don't love it. I don't really like it or love it, but I could tolerate it if I need to. Oh, that's really intoxicating, but only for so long. That seems like it never gets boring. You start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, not in this way that's just like solely intellectual, but it's experimental, right? So instead of follow your passion, explore your curiosities and do that long enough to learn things about yourself and build in time to reflect, take a walk, take a break, sit down, ask yourself the what and the why of the things that you try.
Something I wanted to talk about. I was watching an interview before we came on the show today, and it's something that I see a lot of people talk about. It's like a reoccurring phrase, like, oh, if you're not getting the results you want, stop being lazy, get off your butt, and, go to work. Like, what? as if the person who's not having the different things in their life is not already working hard. Like, you know, working at the factory for how many ever hours a week, and you don't have the different things. Oh, you're not working hard because you don't have to think. No, they're working hard. But I don't want to say what is the real key in order to start to see those incremental results in their life, but what is a better piece of, you know, advice than just saying get off your butt and, you know, start working harder? Because a lot of people are working hard and they're not getting the results that they want. Because I know a lot of people who work hard, you know, and I hate hearing that. It's like, man, are you gonna give me some real advice? Or you just gonna tell me to work harder, man? You know what I'm saying? Like, man, this person working harder than you, and you just like, but he just understands like business and like getting these. It's deeper than just working hard. It's about working smart. It's about knowing the business, the ins and outs, and like I want to like try to break that machine because that's annoying for me just to hear people just like, oh, you got to work harder. And it's like it has to be a better piece of advice than just work harder.
Yeah, it's a joke to me when people tell me to work harder. It's like, what the hell do you know? You know, like you don't know. You know, like unless you're my mom. Yeah, my mom could tell me to work harder. Yeah. But that's about it. You know. I think people who are just like, get off your behind, get off this, get to it, stop being a lazy, blah, blah, blah. Like to me that's kind of foo-foo motivation. And then God forbid you're taking yourself seriously. Then that's like, bro, like take that shit on somewhere, man. You're not actually like telling me anything.
Megalomaniac,
yeah. Like come on, like so to me like. You know, motivation can be a good thing. Don't get me wrong. Like, I love me some Eric Thomas. I love me people who kind of get me pumped up and who talk
Wallow
that
267.
You know, talk it. Shout out to Wallow.
Yeah.
Shout out to Wallow. What's going on, brother?
Yeah, that's my man.
Give me your best. It's just like that.
Yeah. It's just like that. Yeah, that's my guy.
But I love me some of those people, right? Who can kind of just get that self-talk, you know, where you just kind of rile yourself and be like, all right, like, bet, like, I got this. I'll take this challenge on. But then there's the other kind of condescending people who were trying to talk down onto you that, like, you don't got this figured out. And the reason that you don't got this figured out is because, you know, you're doing it all wrong or you know, you're failing because you're not giving enough or you're not sacrificing enough. And that's just such a blanket, uninformed, just assumption. You know, you don't know what you're talking about. Like there are, and generations of my family have worked hella hard, destroying their bodies, destroying their minds. You know, destroying their financial, like sacrificing themselves so much for a job or for this or for that or doing what they're told. And I think. You took the words out of my mouth, but it's working smart. It's not. To me, it's not. I don't think for my people, for black people, I don't think there's a question that we're some hardworking people.
Yes,
that's not in question to me. What's the challenging part is how to apply that work into a direction that's going to move you as far along as the work that you're putting in. I think there's not one blanket, you know, answer that you can give to that, but I think it's more of a way just to be thinking about the challenges in your life. It's hard work is such an important part, but at the end of the day, like you got to know how much you have to give and how to make the most out of that. And yeah, I mean, it's not a piece of blanket statement that I can give one advice that solves everything. Everybody's life is so unique. Everybody has unique challenges, problems, families, things that they're trying to support and invest in. And I think really the key is to be working smarter. And I think, you know, through all the things that have been said about really looking at others and reading and kind of getting your mental game right, getting hip on what's going on, because I think to the degree that you know, we're not educated or we don't know what's going on, we're left out. That's when we don't have a choice but to do anything but to work hard, right? To sacrifice all of the things that these other people aren't sacrificing, right? And it's you got to get that knowledge, you got to get hip on what's going on. That can come from a lot of different directions, but to me that would be the key.
I love it.
Yeah, man. I think sometimes we treat the truth as if it's a weapon that we use against people or like a club to, like, you know, hit somebody upside the head with it. It's like I saw some TV show, some guy said, listen here, brother, let me F you up with some truth right now, right? and that's kind of how we think about the truth. Let me F you up with some truth. But I think about the words of Jesus who said, ye shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. If you're speaking truth into another person's life, it ought to feel like you're fighting for that person's freedom. Like we should strive to speak truth as if we are really advocating for people's possibilities and striving to make them feel like we're advocating for their possibilities. That doesn't mean we make them feel warm and fuzzy inside. But if you're trying to motivate your students to work harder, or if you're trying to motivate somebody in your family to make a change, it doesn't have to feel warm and fuzzy in order for it to feel like, hey, look, I'm pointing these things out because I want you to win. I'm not trying to shame you. I'm not trying to embarrass you. I'm not trying to make you look bad. I want you to win. And so sometimes we get so caught up in using truth like it's about owning people. I mean, you know, you look at so many videos now, it's like, this guy owns that guy. This guy owns that guy. And so we put a lot of content out there with that spirit of owning people. We begin to lose the empathy that's necessary to make a real connection and to actually lift people up. And one of the ways that we do that is what you just pointed out. We make assumptions about people that we don't even know. And I think it's absolutely terrible to ever assume that you know anything about the real reasons for why another human being fails. If you don't have a relationship with that person, you don't know their full story. We were just talking about this yesterday, how homelessness, it's so easy for many people to look at the homeless as like, hey, just you can fix that by giving that person a lot of money, or just get a job, or I'm gonna buy you a suit and clean you up and you can go get a job. And a lot of the problems of homelessness are due to mental health issues. So even if you did put that person in a nice suit, freshen them up and got them a job, they might not even be in a position to hold on to that job because there are mental health issues that need to be treated first. If you just dismiss people based on the exterior and say you just need to work harder, you overlook the most beautiful element on earth, which is the multifaceted nature of a human being. And we have to speak to human beings with just a sense of honoring that dignity, honoring the mystery that is intrinsic to every person, such that even if I know you really well, I'll never have the full read on you. There will always be things about you that only God knows. And my job isn't to try to figure you out, but it's to try to help you out with humility in the best way that I can by taking into account that your story is just as nuanced as mine. What I would say to anybody that's like feeling like they're working hard and they're just not getting anywhere, just working on that general information, I would say it could be one of three things. One, it could be that you just need to keep doing the same thing for a little while longer. It's easy to assume that just because a person isn't getting results, that they're getting it wrong. Sometimes they just may not have an understanding of how long the process actually is. If my doctor tells me you're going to experience pain for 6 months and I experience pain for 2 days and I'm shocked and I'm calling him like, doc, what's wrong? And he says, it's a 6-week thing. I go, oh, then I calm down. I still feel the pain, but I don't add a story of suffering to that experience of pain because now I have information to contextualize it. Oh, I just keep doing the same thing, but for a little while longer. That may be the case because we can stop every hardworking person's story somewhere in the middle where they were doing all the right things and be like, hey, they haven't made it yet. The second thing could be you're doing the right thing, but you're going at it alone. And it may be time to embrace the vulnerability necessary to ask for help or seek help, because each of us is capable of doing amazing things on our own, but we all have a ceiling for what we can accomplish without connecting to other people. We're social beings, we're communal beings, and we have to succeed with an honest recognition of that. And the third thing could be, hey, you're working hard and you're doing a lot of good things, but there's just stuff you don't know. No one knows everything. There's some information you may not have been exposed to, and it might be time to get some new ideas, to get some new insights by taking a look at other people that have already figured out what you're in the middle of trying to figure out. It could be any one of those things. And I like to take a personal approach. I like to put information out there in a way that creates dialogue so people can speak back to us. I mean, Kamau talks a lot about actually getting into your comment section and engaging people and not just treating social media like, hey, I'm putting something out there, love me with them likes. but actually talking back to people
Yes.
and asking follow-up, asking for clarification. And you build better relationships like that. And it actually makes you a better content creator because now you're speaking with a more nuanced understanding of what it means to be human. And you're not just, disparaging people to get hits or to make yourself look good,
I love it. I want to get to some supporter questions as well. Make sure we get to this because they love it. This is probably their favorite part of the show.
Shout out to them.
Shout out, everybody. What's happening?
Shout out to the Breaking the Machine family.
I love the name, by the way. Can you talk a little bit about
Breaking the
what
Machine?
inspired you to pick Breaking the Machine? I love the name.
Dang, that's good. I love it. Appreciate it. Originally, it was supposed to be Break in the Machine. Like, it was like a revolving type of machine, right? And everybody gets their one break, right? The machine stops, because the machine's trying to keep us in the middle. It's trying to keep us down. But then everybody gets their break when they can make it out, whether that's the, school, the prison, the pipeline, whatever you think the man or the machine or the system is against you, it's going to stop one time, at least one time in your life, and you got a chance to get out. So it was like, this is your break in the machine. So this, when these cameras come on and these mics come on, this is your break in the machine. This is your chance to get out. We like Harriet Tubman, we getting you through, So, but I didn't know if people would be able to say it the way it was like, breaking the machine, or it would sound like breaking the machine instead of just break in the machine. Because I would have to pause like, oh, you tuned in to break in the machine instead of saying you tuned in to break in the machine, and it sounds like I'm saying break in the machine. So I'm like, let me just call it Breaking the Machine, just to, But it was originally an homage to Joe Budden's Rage in the Machine. His album Rage in the Machine, because I'm a fan of Joe Budden in his podcast. So I was like, I like, going against the machine, but how can I, do that in my own way? Breaking the machine, and it's kind of like breaking the matrix, but it's just like going against that social stigma. The machine to me is social stigmas that weigh us down. Those children that we talking about going in these schools and they feel like they can't, go after the different things that they want in life, or they can't be this or be that. It's the social stigma. When I look at these children, the biggest thing that weighs them down is not the money that they don't have, or the different things that they don't have access to, or they don't know how to network yet or talk the best way. Is that social stigma on them that tells them to not want any more than they have, or they can't access any more that they have. So it's just like, when I saw that, I'm like, we got to break that. So the machine to me is social stigma. That's pretty much all it is in this, because it's like nothing is holding you back. I had those same circumstances against me, but I didn't have that social stigma. I was willing to look crazy like you was talking about. You know what I'm saying? We might be looking crazy now, I don't care, but it's like this is how we do it. Like I was telling my man David, man, on the Inner Wealth podcast, I'm like, man, the good guys got to show they wins. Like, like we got to show that like the good guys can win too, because all the, the good guys, the bad guys, but it's just like, man, if you trying to push positivity, man, show the young people that you can win. Show them that you can do it a different way. So Breaking the Machine, that's what it is to me, and blue is my favorite color. So I was just like, man, I got to make the whole thing based around blue,
Hey, man, I love that. Like, that has a lot of resonance with, our vision for Revolution of One, because for us, it's about understanding that, if we think about the political machine, right? Where for so many people, the political machine is a substitute for spirituality. It's a substitute for self-actualization. And we put all of our faith in politicians that are never going to come into our neighborhoods, that don't really care about us, who say whatever it is they need to say and that they have mastered saying in order to get our vote. And then they go about their business and our lives remain the same. And for us, it's about helping people understand that the real revolution won't be televised, but it will be individualized. The real revolution starts with you and embracing the things that you can do to change the stuff that's within your locus of control. Not dismissing the systemic stuff as unimportant, but understanding that the systemic stuff is just a secondary expression of the personal stuff that we decide, where we decide to embrace our own power. And so I just love that concept of really helping people to understand that, we're our only hope, really. I think about it in the Matrix where Morpheus says, there's only one way to save the city, and it's Neo, right? There's only one way to save the city. And I think it's the same way for all of us. It's looking each other in the eyes and saying, you're the one. They're never going to put down their weapons. The machine is never going to say, you know what, I'm tired of it. You guys can be free. No, you got to take it.
Yeah, I mean, to build on this Revolution at one point, I was thinking the exact same thing as he was explaining. The break in the machine is how really, the goal, I think, is to empower individuals to think, to rise above it and to elevate themselves. And the reason why I feel like there are these platforms that are popping up, these same messages, these revolution of ones, these breaking the machines, is because we know that we can't do it for you.
Yeah.
That you have to choose to be like, nah, I'm out, or nah, like I'm opting out, or nah, like I'm choosing me, And I think what we all, I think, are on the same page about is that there are machines, that there are systems, that there are oppressions that have held people down, and they're relentless, right? And that they don't plan on relinquishing power anytime soon, right? If anything, it's going in the opposite direction. And I think there are a lot of people out there who also feel like that, but just need people to believe in them, need people to believe that, like, if you feel like you're the crazy one out of your circle, there's a lot of us crazy ones out here, what I'm saying? Yeah. And like, we are building together, because there's a lot of people who are also asleep, and they're just walking, they're just kind of following the direction of everybody else. And it's like, nah, man, like what you feel inside, is a legit thing. And I think the direction that you need to go is something that you can only choose, but you got to first choose to believe that direction is possible.
Oh man, one more thing too. Like, okay, so I love that Break the Machine has the part that says break, which is what you have to do, but it also has the acknowledgement of the machine. And something that Kamau and I talk about a lot is there are a lot of people who advocate for personal responsibility, but when they advocate for personal responsibility, they sound like they're saying to people, nobody's ever out to get you. No one is against you. There are no hardships. Everything is fair. Everything is good. Opportunity exists for everyone. And I say no. No, it doesn't work like that, because we don't make people better by teaching them how to be naive. The harsh reality of life is that there probably is somebody out to get you. There are people out there who hate you and who plot against you. And you are not going to be the first human being to ever live that's going to escape that. There are conniving and cunning people that will try to exploit you, take advantage of you, oppress you in all sorts of ways. Some people who are from your own neighborhood, some people who are from a different neighborhood. And the way that we deal with that reality is by neither being a victim, but also not by advocating for some concept of personal responsibility that requires us to lie to ourselves about our hardships. Break the machine means that we've got to acknowledge that we have the opportunity to escape, but we are dealing with the machine. And so that means in order to effectively deal with that machine, we can't put our trust in that. The master is never going to educate the slave on what the slave needs to do in order to be free. The master only teaches the slave those things that are conducive for the slave doing work that pleases the master. And so you've got to take your education and your personal development into your own hands. Who runs the schools that you educate yourself at?
Whew. Man, and I think that's the thing that breaks my heart so much when I see, the young people, man. It's just like they just trapped in it, man. Like you see this young man, or this young lady, and she just like, they have creativity, they have dreams, but they just trapped in it so much. I mean, I connect with the young men, obviously, and it's just like, man, like you trapped in that archetype. You got so much creativity, just working with them. They say some of the most prolific things, and it's just like, dang, that came out of your mind. You just like creative. Yeah. Like I had one student tell me, like, the child you treat the worst is the one you need the most. And she was talking about her relationship with her parent, and I was just like, dang. I was just like, whoa. Like, and that's when it got me in the mindset. I'm like, I got to start writing a book, because like dealing with y'all, it just gives me so much, like, just like energy, creative energy. But it's just like when you see that young man and he's just like, he's acting out a character. He's acting out because he's in survival mode. He has to put on this character because it's what keeps him safe, at night. It's what keeps him safe during the day. But it's just like, man, it's so much creativity that you seeing your peers around the world express, and they expressing themselves, and they going far because they can live in that creative space. And you can live there too, but you feel like you're trapped in it. That's what this is about. Our demographic is largely just college students and people under the age of 28, and it's just like, those are the people. I mean, I want to speak to everybody, but it's that young man or that young girl who's just like trapped in their own environment and they just can't escape. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just gets to me, man. It gets to me. That's why what you was just saying, it was hitting me. I'm just like, man, Jesus Christ.
For whatever reason, this quote is coming up again, but it's just what you said to me, bro, an hour ago. You know,
what's that?
Choosing to be the loser in somebody else's story to be the hero in your own.
Man.
Yeah. You know, I like to say that for everybody that lives an interesting life, there's always somebody back at the high school they used to go to saying, man, whatever happened to them? You know, you got to be willing to be the loser in somebody else's story to be the hero of your own. Man. Absolutely. Hey, and no matter where y'all from, who's listening, no matter where you're from, I think the real great conspiracy, I'm using a loaded term, right? But like, think about all of the mythologies and the fairy tales and the stories from our youth. They all center around a universal theme that we all know subconsciously. And that universal theme is, you are more powerful than you have ever been told. You are more powerful than you can afford to be told. And, you know, when people believe that they are incapable of great things, that they'll never get out of that neighborhood, that they'll never have the things that their parents didn't have, the question I want to ask you is, who wins when you believe that? Somebody's winning as a direct result of you buying into that. And I don't mean to advocate for any philosophy that naively tells you that it's going to be a cakewalk, that it's going to be easy. But you have so much possibility in your life, no matter where you are. Your parents may be the ones that raised you, but you are made in the image and likeness of infinite creativity. And you are born to uniquely express some aspect of the divine that no other human being is ever capable of expressing. If you don't do what you're born to do, it is not the case that somebody else will come along and do it. That's just going to be a gap that exists, because who you are is unrepeatable. You are irreplaceable. There cannot, nor will there ever be a sequel. Never let anybody tell you that your possibilities are defined by where you came from, or by how much money your parents had, or by the lack and the scarcity that defined your childhood. You get to create who you are. You get to write your own narrative. And there are people that have done it before you, and you're going to be one of the stories that we talk about in the future to help somebody else get out of the machine.
Man, I love it, man. Hey, start now. The clock is ticking. I wanted to get to some supporter question. Lewis asks, how do you guys control your motivational fire, having ups and downs, lack of consistent high motivation? I don't know, we kind of talked about this obviously throughout the podcast, but I think for me it's just it's just connecting with, like you said, my why, and it kind of always keeps me going. Because in the beginning, it was more so about finances. It was more so about, I don't know, it's just like when you're born in that impoverished environment, that you know, that drive for, when you were born without that drive for, you know, having is so intense in you. Like when you're born with a lack, you're just like, I want something so bad, you know, because I didn't have those shoes. I couldn't go on that field trip. Then, you know, we in spring break, they going to Florida, they going to, you know, Disneyland, and I'm up, you know, I'm eating, you know, just like, I'm still in the hood, and it's just like, man, I wanted so bad, but I had to break it, and I had to really understand when I saw my friends who had that, my friends who was going to Disneyland, my friends who had both parents, my friends that was in that good environment. You know what I'm saying? I got friends who come from that are no longer here now. I got friends who come from that who are incarcerated now. I got friends who come from that who in like positions that I personally wouldn't want to experience right now. But I thought they had the key, they had the formula because they were brought up a certain type of way. But when I understood the formula was literally just love and faith in a higher power for me, you know, and once I understood that, I was like, okay, so what am I grinding for now? Because it's not the money anymore. It's just to maintain that love that we have in this circle. You know, and whatever anybody needs in this circle, I will provide for that. You know, if my mom needs this, if my sister needs this, if my brothers need that, I will provide for that. So the money is not about getting the things that I didn't have anymore or the things I didn't have in the past. It's just about protecting those in this circle, you know?
Yeah.
And that kind of, it keeps me going. You know, that's what keeps me going. And that's kind of what does it for me.
Yeah.
think for me, I think speaking to the point that you were talking about, when you come from, humble beginnings, to just put it nicely, that I really don't feel like you actually need more motivation. I think you're pretty motivated, and you're hungry, right? And I think what ends up draining people like that is continuing to ram their heads against the same wall over and over and again, and wanting to just push the wall forward just an inch. Just give me an inch, give me a couple inches. Like, let me have some breakthroughs. And I think what ends up happening is you just get tired. It's not that you lack the motivation. You're just worn out because you're just running this thing and you just keep running up against it. And so for me, when I feel like that, I know it's really time for me to step back from this thing. Either that's when I kind of get into my reflection piece, or that's kind of when I try to get outside. I need to go somewhere where I feel recharged, and I just kind of do the opposite, right? Like, instead of trying to double down and add more motivation and more fire, like I actually try to do more rejuvenating things. I know I'm a pretty damn motivated person. I don't know if everybody shares that, but I know, if you come from humble beginnings and you want something bigger, like, you're pretty motivated. So it's just a matter of finding ways to support yourself and sustain those efforts.
Yeah. Two things. So on the motivation piece, I think motivation is the inextinguishable fire that comes from having a compelling vision. There's a verse in the Bible that says, "My people," "without vision, my people perish."
Yes.
Right. And you look at great people, like we both love Mamba, and just how that drive that he had. That guy had a compelling vision of greatness, right? And that compelling vision of greatness allows you to not only look at the moment that's in front of you, but it allows you to look through the moment and see who you get to become on the other side of the hardship that you're going through right now. And I would encourage you to always be fueling the fire of your vision. Think about it in terms of like money in a bank. If I go to my bank right now, how much money can I take out? We don't know the answer to that question. It depends. How much money did you put in before you needed to take something out? If I didn't put anything in there, when I'm in a moment of need and I go to the bank to take something out, nothing's going to be there for me. It's the same thing with motivation. It's like the title of that book says, you got to dig your well before you need the water. No well digging, no water drinking. With motivation, what are you doing during those moments where you are motivated and you can get yourself going to feed the fires of your vision, so that when, not if, you have those darker days, you'll have something that you can unearth from your own soul that will get you through. Because those are the days where other people's words won't get you through. It'll only be the things that you put in your own soul. The other thing I would say is approach work cyclically. Think about it in terms of seasons. There are things that you do on a nice spring day that you would never go out and do on a winter day. And then when it's winter time, you don't act surprised. You plan for it. You know that winter is coming. And in wintertime, you do wintry things and things that you would never do when it's summertime, right? Think about your feelings like the seasons. You're going to have days where, not because you did something wrong, they're just going to be wintry days. You're going to wake up and you're just not going to feel like you're on top of the world. You're not going to feel like you want to just get out there and work really hard. It doesn't mean you did something wrong. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you're a human being and you're not one-dimensional. You're going to have many different feelings. It takes lots of different feelings to be a human being. And I would say develop an ability to discover the kinds of work that are optimized for the various seasons of your life. There are things that I'm really good at doing on those dark days, and there are things that I can only do when I'm feeling inspired and motivated. And you need to know what those things are for you, so that when you have those days that you're just kind of sad, you can just say, okay, I'm going to work on this aspect of my project because I know that I can do this during any season. And I'll wait until I feel a little bit differently to come back to these things. So you always have something that you can do, but what you're doing is optimized for the state that you're in.
That's powerful, because I remember, working on the ancestral plane, doing the videos and doing clips. It'd be like that. Like some days, like I can't just clip it. I can just watch a series of lectures and I just watch it, I'm just like, okay, this is what my assignment today is. Or for a week, if I don't feel like editing up, I just watch. And then it's a season where I feel like editing. And it's just like, okay, but I'm productive every day, but I'm not doing that every day because that takes a certain energy that I don't have in this period of time. So I can do this, but I'm constantly I'm still moving. I'm just not doing that every day, you know?
That's right.
And I love it. I love it, man.
To your point about the still moving too, I think a lot of people get impatient. And they're like, I'm not doing enough, or it's not happening fast enough. And I think what you guys are talking about, I like it because it's we're still moving.
Yeah, that's right.
We're not stopped, we're still moving.
Yeah.
A question from Jay. She asks, do you know how to properly give and receive love? Like, what's the I mean, I know that's kind of a bland question, but I think just because I know the conversation that we've had previous on here, a lot of what we talk about is in the inner, just men, a lot of men in general, we don't know how to receive affirmation and receive love. And when we was talking about Mr. Jason Wilson, that's something he talks about, just not being able to receive these positive affirmations and love. Like, what's a way, because I know that's what the question really is, like, what's a way, like, we can start to receive that love that maybe some of us were taught maybe when we were taught indirectly not to receive it, because we didn't get it growing up, so we don't know how to receive it. Like, or how do you deal with somebody who can't receive that, Like, how do you even communicate with somebody who can't even receive those affirmations from you?
It's funny because this is a thing that comes up on my podcast a lot too. Like, we talk about this. It's me. It's a brother named Tunji Adebayo, and then a chick named Zuri Mabry. And when we're on the podcast and we're talking, Zuri always brings up a lot of times, like, black men, man, like, y'all just got it so damn tough. Like, what's up with the love? Like, and so me and Tunji always are put in positions where we just kind of gotta like speak for all of us and be like, well, like, look, But no, I think, I think for me, I've grown up around a lot of different communities. Like, I've been to predominantly white schools. I've been in predominantly black schools. Like, I've been to public schools. I've been homeschooled. I've been to private school. I've been to charter school. Like, I've had the opportunity, and then to see people from other races, Indian and Hispanic, and so I've seen how all of these different cultures approach this love, this topic of love. And I think, for me, what it comes down to is just accepting that that's a part of life, and that it's an important part, that you can't and should not deny that part. You should not like try to do all the things to avoid that part, right? Like, I think just an acceptance first is an appropriate first step, because I think, again, just like we've been talking about this theme about accepting being a loser in somebody else's story, right? Like, I don't care what I look like, and I'm okay with that. I don't care. It's the hardest part. But I think if you can first like give yourself permission and just accept, like, this is a universal thing, and it's such a powerful thing, right? Like, we talk about creativity, which is another theme that I think so much, it ties so much into everything else. Love is no different. And I think acceptance in this thing is a means for you to see more of it in your life. Like, if you can just accept it, right? Like, if you don't know how to necessarily give love yet, which I don't believe, by the way, because you're almost born knowing how to give love. But if you've convinced yourself you don't know how to give love, just accept receiving it first, and then through that you'll start to see more.
Yeah. I'll weigh in on the receiving end and the giving end. On the receiving end, I think sometimes it's difficult to receive love because we're suspicious that we're all fundamentally a fraud, and the person who is trying to love us only loves us because they don't know the truth of how unlovable we really are.
Jesus Christ.
And so we push love away because we don't think we're worthy to receive it. And we're convinced that they're only loving us out of naivete. If you really knew the real me, You wouldn't give me that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it back over to you. And what I would say, if you've ever felt like that, is first, the person who's showing you love generally isn't assuming that you're perfect. You know, we can see this in the inability to take a compliment. Somebody says, wow, you're really good at that. Oh, well, you know, my mama told me that. Well, you know, it's just because, well, I kind of got a that person isn't saying that they think everything about you is absolutely amazing and that you have no flaws. They're just complimenting you about one specific thing, and they're telling the truth about you. And you don't have to explain it away. You don't have to protect anybody against it. You can just say thank you. That's not arrogant. You didn't say, yeah, I know I'm all that. You just thank you. I really appreciate that. Hey, thank you for taking the time to say that. Memorize those 3 statements and make it an experiment to try for the next week. When anybody gives you a compliment, just say one of the following things. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm really grateful for that. You know, like just try it. It'll do wonders for the soul. On the giving end, and this is a little bit tricky, I think the best way to give love is to give it in the way that is best for that other person. Sometimes when we accuse people of not being good at receiving love, it's because they don't want to be loved in the way that we want to love them. And we have to be open to the fact that our particular love language is not necessarily everybody else's love language. And there may be a way that I like to be shown affection. And if I'm trying to give that to you and it's awkward for you, part of loving you is respecting that fact and then doing the hard work of saying, I'm going to admit I don't know how to love you. And now I'm going to make myself a student of you so that I can learn how to love you more effectively. And that's the harder part of relationships, because relationships will be really easy if other people just let us love them the way that we love them. Oh man, that'd be really easy. I'd never have to pay attention to my wife, right? Because for me, I can just go out there and make some money and be like, hey, I loved you today in the way that I like to love. And now I don't have to be a student of her. Now I don't have to learn anything about her. And we have to be willing, if we truly love people and want to show them that we love them, then we don't start by throwing darts of affection based on what we think love is. We start by making ourselves a student of them, being curious about them, asking them questions about moments in life that have really meant something to them. And we don't even have to be direct with it. We don't even have to say, write me an essay on how you'd like to be loved so I can follow the formula and do it right. You can just simply say things like, hey, what was like a moment for you where you really felt seen? Or who was a person in your life that really positively influenced you? I guarantee you, they're going to tell you information about somebody that made them feel loved, that made them feel respected, that made them feel valuable. And you get clues from that. And so being a successful giver of love requires being a successful student.
Could you tell the listeners where they can find you guys?
For sure. You can find me at my website, What Now Kamau. Kamau is spelled KAMAU.com, whatnowkamau.com. And there you will find links to Revolution One, which is the brand that TK created, but that I'm the acting director of. We are growing on the media side, on the programmatic side in schools, high schools. So yeah, you can find both of the links to those things at whatnowkamau.com.
Just piggybacking on that Revolution of One piece, one of my goals is to go into 50 classrooms over the course of the next 12 months and talk directly with students about the kinds of things that we're talking about now, with an emphasis on 7th, 8th graders and high school students. And this is a project that I do for free. So I'm not charging a speaker fee for these projects. So if you are a teacher or you know someone that's connected to teachers, I want to arrange to come into that classroom virtually or in person to talk to your students about how to think critically, how to develop life skills, and how to take charge of their own lives, not according to my ideals or someone else's, but according to the reality of the situation in which they find themselves. So I just want to put that out there. You can find me at tkcoleman.com. All the links, every way to get a hold of me, it's all there. If you want my email, you can just put an @gmail at the end of TK Coleman, and you can find me there.
I love it, man. I appreciate y'all tuning in to this episode of Breaking the Machine. I told y'all it was a special episode, right? Hey, man, this is TK Coleman, Kamau, Ahmad the Poet, Breaking the Machine. That's a wrap for this episode. You dig?